Yeah, start the recording, Eric.
I just realized I'm like, the video.
That's Bush League.
I'll tell you.
Anyways, so I was thinking about this, and I was like, I have also a collection of lanyards.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's different, yeah.
But is it, though? Think about all the trainings you've gone to. You probably pick up a lanyard. You have a little name tag you got to wear. I have tons of those. Mm-hmm. All the Super Bowls, NCAA Final Four, I have these lanyards from that. I'm not trying to collect them. I just do. They're just all hanging
They just always
there.
give us stuff anytime we're going somewhere, like a lanyard to wear. I've got them on my door in my office. There's 15 lanyards just hanging there. Yeah.
So the only one that I'm missing is like a Glock lanyard. I would just want like a Glock
You
gun
gotta go to
lanyard.
SHOT Show then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I will. So I'm just saying, it's weird. It's a weird insight into policing. We collect weird stuff that literally nobody else cares about. I show people coins, unless you were in the military or like a firefighter or a cop, they're like, cool.
That's a cool design, and then they don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't actively like try to collect them, but if I get them, I'm like, oh, cool. I've got
I'm
like
not
a little
throwing
display.
them away.
But yeah.
I think I had one before I started working here. Just one coin.
Oh, yeah.
Now I got a few.
Yeah. It's
No,
going to get
that's
worse.
True. Yeah, I only had one.
Yeah.
From one thing I was doing, and now I got a whole box. I just got a display box finally. Because I didn't want the.
What a nerd. Just kidding.
Oh, that will come out. Don't worry. There's no hiding that.
I know. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Welcome to 7 Points, a podcast produced by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, where we talk to different individuals who make our department so great. Whether a state trooper or civilian support staff, every employee has a unique story and path they took to get here. 7 Points asks guests 7 specific questions to give listeners insight into what it means to work here and to be a part of the law enforcement family.
All right, well, let's get started here with this episode. So today we have Trooper Paramedic Mike Snyder from Ranger, which is the call sign for all of our helicopters here at the Arizona Department of Public Safety. So Mike is flying on a helicopter. So first and foremost, we've got these 5 dating profile questions. How long have you worked at DPS? You're coming up on 12 years.
Yep.
So, but you said 10 years with aviation.
Yep, coming on. The dates are about the same from when I graduated, became sworn, and moved over to the helicopter.
Is that like, are you one of the longest tenured people in aviation right now?
No, I'm not. There's still plenty of pilots and then trooper paramedics down in our southern base that are. But at my base, right now I am, yes, at Central.
Yeah, I was going to say, Frank's been there for, 150 years?
Yeah, like
give or take, maybe?
I think he's badged like 25 or something like that.
Something.
So.
Yeah, like when they invented flight, Frank was there.
Yeah, he was with the Wright brothers.
And then he was like,
cheering him on,
also, I work for DPS, so.
Your favorite food, the same thing we've gotten from almost everybody, a prime ribeye steak.
Yeah.
Now, do you like to cook it yourself? We've gotten this on almost every episode. Do you like to cook it yourself?
Absolutely.
Do you like it from a restaurant? Also, cook it yourself.
Yeah.
How do you
I
cook
get
it?
picky. Just a really high temp sear, and then I kind of know how my grill works, and I try to figure out. So I know where the hot spot is, and then just time it. Usually, depending on how thick it is, room temp, and then 8 to 10 minutes because I like it medium rare.
No.
So
now, is your grill charcoal, pellet? What
I wish I had a pellet.
using?
It's just a propane,
Okay. Hey,
but
that works.
simple.
It works. Yeah.
Nothing
Now,
wrong
one
with
day
that.
I'll update it.
Propane.
Yeah, you know what else would work is him inviting us over for the have.
Well,
Yeah,
based
that
on
would
the
work.
amount of people that have said they like steak on this show, we need to start having steak on this show.
There you
I
go.
think that's just going to open up for a lot more people.
I feel like that request should be submitted. So I don't know who would make that request.
We're going to take care of that.
I like it.
Your favorite movie, which I appreciated this, Ghostbusters, and you can explain why Ghostbusters is your favorite movie.
Well,
Because
it's
you're
a
wearing the
hard
same
one.
outfit.
Yeah, right.
It's just a bonus, Growing up, loved Ghostbusters. It was nerdy and funny, and so that's really why I got this job, because it was the only job I could get paid to wear a tan flight suit like the
Yes.
Ghostbusters.
On Halloween, do you just take the patches off and go around trick-or-treating with your friends?
Oh, he's a Ghostbuster.
Yeah,
Yeah, instead of an ambulance, he's got a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you guys dress up the helicopter? What was the ectomobile?
Yeah.
that would
you're
be-
coming up with names. I don't
That
know.
would be fun. No, it is Ecto.
Yeah,
Ecto
well,
1. We should just call Ranger 1 Ecto 3 or
Yeah.
something.
That'd be hilarious,
Yeah.
actually.
And then your favorite hobby and what do you do for fun? Shooting, reloading, hunting, and you're a weather nerd. What does a weather nerd mean? Like, what is that?
I'm obsessed with weather. Like, looking
In
for-
Arizona.
Yeah, even in Arizona, it's weird. This time of year, it's been boring.
It really
it finally
has been.
rained, over the last day.
Yeah.
Finally. But,
Thank
monsoon
goodness.
season here is always exciting. And I always love following the stuff back in the Midwest with tornado season. And, just always been fascinated with, just looking up in the sky. I'm like, how does that work?
And you slightly look like Glenn Powell. And that's a compliment. I'll say it. I'll be the guy. It's fine.
Oh, I hope my brother listens to this.
Oh, I
part.
know. I know. So, you know what I mean? Like, get you like a huge Dodge Ram and go chase storms and stuff.
Yeah, after your DPS career, you're going to
There
be
it
that's
is.
what you're going
That's
to be
perfect.
tornado
I'll just be-
chasing.
Get you a cowboy hat. It'll
Yep.
be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah.
Wait, so I know that's a new one. Who
Yeah.
was Glenn Powell's character in the old one? Was it Dennis
Bill
Quaid?
Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Bill
thank
Bill
you.
Paxton, yeah.
And Helen Hunt. Yeah.
Yes.
So were you? I don't know why I just asked that, but hey, it's on the recording.
Whatever pops in your head, Eric,
exactly.
just
Yeah,
go with
that's
it.
fine.
Were you a weather nerd? Because I understand, obviously, flying in a helicopter. I know every mission you guys are checking the weather. You guys are making sure everything's good to go. Were you a weather nerd before you came to aviation, or do you think that kind of helped hone that interest?
I've been a weather nerd since I was little. I'd
well, there
sit in
you
the
go.
window and watch the thunderstorms come into town, look at the lightning all night.
Nice.
But definitely going into aviation, it's like, well, now this is actually important.
Yes.
This is useful now.
It's not just a fun thing. I should be a little more astute to it.
Nice. Okay. Well, our viewers here, we added something to the studio here. We have our nice logo here.
Yeah.
And then you can't see, we've got an actual sign so that those of us hosting this aren't looking at our phones or pieces of paper in front of us. So we're going to work our way down this list. And what usually happens is our guests end up answering more questions on the list through their answers, which we like because it's just more natural conversation. So.
Yeah.
Just starting with the first one, what did you do before you came to DPS? And, where did you grow up? What were you doing before?
Well, I'm one of those rare Arizona natives these days, born and raised in Phoenix. So in town here, kind of what we used to call the North Valley, but it's not so much anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff beyond there. So I guess just in my journey to getting here, I started, graduate high school. I was thinking about doing a military path, but I ended up not doing that. And just got a job at a hospital doing registration. And I'm watching all these people, I'm working in an emergency room. And I'm watching techs and nurses and doctors and surgeons. And I just I was like, I've always thought about medicine a little bit, And so, they had good tuition reimbursement, which is why, it was another perk of the job. And so, I'm like, I'm going to get my EMT. So I go to EMT class at PVCC up there. And I just loved it. And I was like, from that moment, I'm like, I want to be a paramedic. So that kind of set me down like the fire path. And I started, I did like the fire testing and stuff because public safety, but that's where the frontline paramedics work, in my, my young head. Mm-hmm. So kept working in the ER, got my paramedic. While doing all the fire training, I went through like a fire academy at the school. And that was a lot of fun. It was cool. It's just the other side of policing. I'm going to be that weird guy, but... and I go through a ropes class, and I could never tie knots, right, in my life. And this instructor was just amazing, and it just like, poof, light bulb went off. I could tie knots, and we're rigging all this stuff up to do rescue. And I'm like, this is absolutely cool. And then they're like, hey, he's got other classes you can do outside of the academy. So I went through a bunch of his ropes classes.
Was it Russ Dodge?
No, it was not. Is that a guy named Pat Rhodes? I doubt he'll ever listen to this one, but he still does training out there. So I'm out, I'm doing these classes, and I get, meet these guys that are in the class. And there's some college guys, there's some guys from fire department in there, and a guy from Mountain Rescue here locally, Central Arizona Mountain Rescue Association, CAMRA. And I'm like, oh, there's a volunteer team where I could do this, Like, wow, I thought you had to be like on a fire department or paid somewhere. But no, and these guys do some serious real rescues and things. And, they work with the Maricopa County as a posse as well. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay. So I eventually, I'm getting my paramedic. I joined the team at that time, and it kind of sent me down this path of rescue. And that's where I was introduced to helicopter operations for rescue. And so you get, like, when you join the team, you get, like, your initial training, which is a bunch of, hover and low to the ground, toe ends, and eventually you get into the shore haul and rappel. While being on the team, I was actually introduced to DPS Air Rescue. I had no idea it existed. And eventually got carted on the local helicopter here out where I work now to do rappel and short haul. So that kind of sent me down the path of, like, this is something I want to do. So that was, about 2008 and everything. So naturally, nobody's hiring. It's impossible. Yeah. I'm trying to get hired in the fire department. It's difficult, but I get a paramedic. I leave. I start working private EMS. Finally get on a 911 truck, running, like, 911 response calls, working 24-hour shifts, and I loved it. I mean, you were standing on your head all the time. Like, I worked stand-up 24s on my last truck. We were one of the busiest ambulances in the Southwest region for Southwest Ambulance at the time. So, I mean, you were just running calls, crazy. But I was like, I don't want to do this for, this is fun, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my career and whatnot. So I remember when it really hit home, I saw DPS was hiring, and I was like, oh, Ranger, yeah, I want to go do that. I said, well, I'll go, I'll go be a patrol officer. It's no big deal. I've always had an interest in policing too, because my family's, full of cops, a ton of cops in my family. So I'm like, I drop a application in, and it was like about a week after that, I got requested for my first short haul rescue. So it was a assist from Pinal County and Siphon Draw on the Superstition Mountains. So real
you don't
nasty
say
spot.
Pinal County?
Yeah,
Nobody gets rescued out there.
No, never. We're not there all the time. And so I was on shift the next morning. It was like a first light short haul. So I call up the medic that's on duty. I'm like, hey, can you hold over for me for a rescue? And it was he was like, absolutely, yeah, cool. Because everybody kind of knew what I did, and like if the pager went off, and we still had pagers back then for that. And I'm like, oh, what is it? It was always an interest. And go and do this rescue. And I remember flying back like, man, I really, really hope this works out, this application process. Like, as I love this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, eventually go through that process, keep working on the ambulance, and I got hired here. And then started that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you go to high school?
Shadow Mountain. Yeah.
Shadow Mountain.
Yeah.
All right. In the shadow of the mountain, I guess, allegedly, right?
It's funny. The Shadow Mountain is actually further away from the school than the mountains that are closest to it.
Yes.
It's like the Dreamy Draw Mountains are closest. But
yeah. They already got their high school, so.
Yeah.
I mean, you, like we said.
Yeah, stop answering the questions.
You've answered like the first three questions, which is great. So I had a question in my mind, and now I just fled it off. But
Yeah.
So you've always been, so you weren't even really interested in the aviation thing until it got introduced to you.
Yeah.
At that time. Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I always love flight stuff, I mean, every kid wants to be a pilot at some point, right? Or an astronaut. I'd be lying if I wouldn't say that. But it's always interesting, but it was like, it's kind of like people always ask, how'd you get here? I'm like, I don't know. I just kept doing things that were interesting and eventually found made a career out of it,
Yeah, I think that's interesting because so many of our guests have said, I've always wanted to be a cop. I've always wanted to work there, et cetera, et cetera. And you kind of took this roundabout way that just based on your interests, you ended up here, which I think is cool because, again, like we say almost every episode, there's so much stuff to do here. And your natural interests and just the way that your life went suddenly led you here. And now you're getting to do what you love and what you've wanted to do. And it's not like you were thinking from a little kid, like, oh, I want to be a DPS trooper. That's great if people do, but I think it's almost cooler when somebody gets brought here indirectly just on their own interest, I think that's interesting.
We're just glad you didn't become a firefighter. Is really what it is. Like, and we love our firefighter friends. Don't get crazy, everybody.
Yeah.
Firefighter heroes. We get it, okay?
Yeah, in a roundabout way, I mean, yeah, you actually, had an interest for this, but do you think the career found you?
I guess you could say it did,
So then once you're here at DPS, because like you said, you've been here for about 12 years, but you're in aviation for 10 years. What did you do for those 2 years between getting hired and then also getting into aviation?
Yeah, so I think it was the second class of new hires after DPS started hiring again. So they didn't, so that was kind of fun. It was like everybody's new. The agency hadn't hired. They hadn't had new people in a while. But that means there was a lot of spots that needed to get filled outside in rural areas in the state. So I kind of knew that going in. They told us that. But that was good because I own a home here in the Valley, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to work here in patrol, so I knew that. But they're like, all right, you can go to these, places out there called remote duty. So you get, state housing, which is, inexpensive. And, I don't know if it still exists that way. There's very few of them now.
It's still only $100 a month. I think it's gone up.
I thought you were about to say it's great, and I was like, well, I don't know if it's great, but
It is housing. They've replaced a ton of. They're actually pretty decent now. They've replaced a ton of them.
Yes. Yeah. So remote duty, and you get a bump in pay, and that worked for me because I was I was like, all right, I'll take a remote duty station, and I can rent a room or have someone stay in my house, and that was I made it work. Because I knew where I wanted to go. I didn't have a family, but even if you do, it's like move them up there, and you could bank some money as a young guy.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
or gal. It's not a bad thing. So I took the Sanders spot. I didn't even know where Sanders was. I had to look on the map when they told me.
Right.
I'm like, I've been around a lot of the state, but that's not a part of the state, and I always say, well, where's Sanders? I'm like, where the Interstate 40 runs? Yeah. You know where New Mexico is? Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
That's the quickest way to describe it.
As far as you can go in that direction.
If you've driven down the 40, you drive right through there, and you barely knew you were there.
Yes.
Wow.
So I started up there, and that was, I did a couple months of training in Metro because we didn't have a lot of field trainers at the time. It just started hiring, so I actually worked down here, and then I got sent up there, and it was kind of like landing on the moon. Because I always say, like, there's Metro work, and then there's rural work, and that's absolutely true.
There are two different things, that's for sure.
It's a different beast, and I landed up there, and I was like, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know, there's no freeways. It's like just 2 lanes this way.
Where's the QT? I need to know where the QT is.
So it was, that was a steep learning curve for me. And remote duty, like once you get off FTO, like you're up by yourself most of the time. So I loved working up there. You worked up on the Navajo Nation, so you were always backing up county or Navajo PD.
Yeah.
And, so it was, you get some, interesting calls you get to go to outside of just the normal highway patrol work, working wrecks and pulling people over and, helping people out. Because there was a lot of interdiction going on up there, too. So, a couple of the deputies up there were real into it, so we were always helping them out with that. So.
Yeah. And by interdiction, just for our guests that don't know, what does that entail?
So you're looking for basically smuggling like narcotics, drugs, money, people, anything that somebody's moving to.
And of course, they're not advertising that.
No, it's a little. You gotta. You're good. You gotta be a good interviewer.
Yeah, they don't have a sticker on the side of the car. Illicit drugs.
Yeah, that would be nice, right?
It is definitely an art form.
Yes.
Just like we heard from Trooper Hankey in one of the previous episodes. Yeah, it is an art form, and you guys up in rural get to do that a lot. I know those of us that were in Metro for our entire patrol time, I wasn't doing much interdiction at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
different kind.
that's true. That's
Different
definitely true.
Yeah,
for
it's a
sure.
little different.
Now, and you went straight from there to the air unit?
No, so I spent my year up there, and then I put in for a Metro squad because I'm just like, it's going to be easier for me. I need to leave that remote spot. I got to get filled,
Oh, you get forgot about a little bit.
Yeah, it can happen. That's just the honest truth, I love my time up there. I want to give it up. That's what really taught me to become, an officer at the time or trooper now.
Right, absolutely.
And it was hugely valuable. But I took a Metro spot because I know it'd be easier for me because I had just interviewed because they had a bunch of paramedics in the state that weren't on Ranger yet. So they had a couple spots opening up. So I had already interviewed. We had like a little board interview for all of us and scored. And so I'm like, I'll come down to Metro because I want to come back home anyways, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to get into a Metro swing squad in Central.
Nice.
So I went from very proactive work to answering that radio, very reactive, wreck after wreck, and
Very
clearing
busy.
stuff. Yeah, so I guess in my short time in patrol, I got a pretty good flavor of both here in the state, which I've always found that to be a valuable thing. From there, I got transferred out of my year, actually, because the spot opened up in Central Air Rescue.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, no,
I won't tell anyone.
No, that goes up the chain a few, a little high up there. So the captain comes in one morning. He's like, "Hey, man, just FYI, you're gonna be transferred in 2 weeks." I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks, Captain. I appreciate it."
Yeah.
And always had very supportive, because everybody
good.
everybody knew. I tell you, like when I sat in my interview for DPS, like I sat down and said, "Hey, guys, I'll learn how to be the best officer, that's what we're called at the time I can, and I'll do my time on patrol, but I'd be lying to you if I'm like, I want to go to the air unit. That's my goal. I'm a paramedic. That's my goal."
Right.
And so throughout, like, coming here, I was always had very supportive sergeants and captains over the time, because they knew where I wanted to go, and as I just worked hard and.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where somebody, you can't make everybody happy, right? So somebody out there is butthurt that you got transferred before your year in Central. I'm sure of it, and that's fine. But the paramedic role, the air rescue role is so unique and requires so much more investment, monetary and time, to get a guy spun up to that.
Yeah.
That if you already had that, like, where's the logic in not putting a guy who's passionate about that already in that spot, right? So, and it's like, hey, thanks for doing what we asked you to do, which is, hey, you got to be sworn, you got to be a trooper first. But why wouldn't we put you there? That would be silly, just a business decision-wise. So it makes sense to me, at least. Why we want guys that are, especially ones that have already received their training, to go do what they're good at and what they're passionate about.
Absolutely.
And for our viewers and listeners, this policy that we're talking about, this 1 year policy, anytime you transfer in DPS, whether you're starting brand new, you have to serve 1 year in that location. After that 1 year, you're eligible to transfer. That being said, the policy also has that little phrase, "for the good of the department,"
Right.
that exactly. We've got somebody who's already a medic, who has experience being a medic, who's done all this stuff, already rope certified, done rescues, all that kind of stuff. Why wouldn't we, for the good of the department, move somebody to that position? So there are ways outside that year policy, but that year policy is pretty concrete for the most part across the board, whether you're in highway patrol, detectives, or whatever. Wherever you go, you're staying for a year unless there's a reason that you're not going to be there for a year. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, for the good of the department, it's also good for the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I say it's like, the caveat to that also is if there's a need. Well, guess what? There's a need. So because people are always hiking in Pinell County and getting lost or stuck on a cliff.
One of those places,
Or
yeah.
what was the guy that you? Well, we'll get to that. But what's your favorite part about DPS? I feel like it's going to be obvious, but what's your favorite part about DPS?
I mean, besides my job right now.
If that's what it is, that's what it is.
I mean, for me, it's my passion. I
Right.
love air operations and rescues and the complexities of working on an air unit, because you're kind of, we have so many jobs. I mean, we're air rescue, but we do a lot more than that.
Right.
We do the law enforcement side, and since we've gotten these new helicopters with the mapping and all these different systems, and like we're so much more successful at it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I actually go find bad guys.
Yeah.
Or assist with pursuits a lot better.
And
Being an air asset, like we work with everybody in the state, every local PD. I've even assisted like Phoenix at times. That's kind of because they have their own air unit. Every federal agency I can think of.
yeah,
We've had Secret Service on board. I've been involved in that kind of stuff, and like we serve like you could be all the way up in Flagstaff PD. You could be in like Benson assistant, like Benson PD.
right.
Every county. So just the law enforcement side is just what we do is we're working with everybody, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, you just kind of, one of our medics would say, you call, we haul. Because you have a helicopter, it's a huge asset. So you're getting calls from all kinds of people for all kind of different things,
Right. And to your point, not every agency has the resources to go out and buy a helicopter and operate and maintain a helicopter and a crew and all that kind of stuff. So they really rely on the state and several other agencies in the state to fill that need for them. So
Yeah.
And I mean, air unit, for what I know, or our Aviation Bureau, is one of the few parts of DPS that is legislatively mandated to exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think get 'em, vehicle theft, air rescue, and that's about it. I mean, there's not that much, but so that's kind of cool that it's kind of like unless they change, that legislation, you guys are always going to be there. You're always going to have a job. So
No, that's always a perk, right?
Yeah, a little
job security.
Job security,
Yeah, job
indeed.
security.
Yeah.
So, just, and this isn't part of the series of questions, but maybe just go in a little bit more detail about what the air unit actually does. I think we've kind of glossed over it a little bit, but maybe a little bit more specifically.
Yeah.
you took the question right out of my mouth. I was
Yeah.
prepping to say
That's
that.
a good question. Yeah, I was like,
I wanted to beat you.
Yeah,
So-
ESP, I tell you.
I'll just say where we're at. So we have a base. We have 4 bases, and so we have one in the western, kind of northwestern side of the state in Kingman. So that's Western Air Rescue. We have one at Flagstaff, which is like north central side of the state. So that's Northern Air Rescue. We have one here. We're out of Scottsdale now, but that's Central Air Rescue, and we have one in Tucson. So that's Southern Air Rescue. The Bureau kind of like this. The history of the program was started back in 1969, and it was actually a federal grant program to test like helicopter medevac stuff. So Vietnam War is going on, and they go, wow, this, we're saving a lot of soldiers. So that went on for a couple years, and it was very successful of getting people to hospital. And at the time, they're kind of like, okay, we're going to use DPS. You have this. They got a couple helicopters. I think they were Sillers. I meant to look at that earlier, but
Yeah.
and took a medic that was with DPS and put him on board. And then about 1972, they said, okay, the state, that's where the legislation comes from. You will do this, and you will medevac.
Right.
So, and that it started in Phoenix, and then the bases kind of grew from there as the needs for that. So we were the primary medevac program forever in the state up until like the mid 2000s. Like I remember working in the ER, and I actually would see Ranger come in all the time
Right.
and bringing patients in. I'm like, wow,
Before private.
before a lot of the private
Yeah.
EMS helicopters came here, yeah. And I'd be sitting there as a registration tech watching this guy come in a flight suit with a shoulder holster on. I'm like, man, he's a cop and a paramedic, and he's that's a cool job. Like, I could never do that. So that's kind of where the program started. Did a lot of medevacs in the 80s, late 70s and the 80s. That's where like the kind of heli rescue stuff started developing. We were one of the first short haul. And so for short haul, that's like basically the rope under the helicopter where they fly and just hang someone on the cargo hook, basically, all the way from somewhere out in the boonies to, a good landing spot where there's an ambulance and whatnot, and they can take them to the hospital. So that we were kind of one of the first couple programs in the United States that started that kind of work. And that went forward, and it's an evolution.
Yeah.
There.
Which that seems short haul, like, no thanks. But if I'm getting rescued, thank you. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like a complete adrenaline rush just hanging from the bottom of a helicopter.
Yeah, you get used to it after a while.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And then sometimes you'll have a rescue. You're like, ooh, I hope I don't have to do that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like a few of those.
Yeah, because short haul is different than I'll have you go into what we have right now with the hoisting systems.
Yeah.
But short haul, that's a static line that it's only going up and down if the helicopter's going up and down. How low below the helicopter are you?
So right now we use a 150-foot line.
150 feet.
Yeah, so you're 150 feet below the
That
helicopter.
seems so
Wow. Wow.
It is, yeah. It's
I mean, I'd love to
crazy.
do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I'd be all about it. But I like the hoist idea, I think, a little more because then I can actually get back up into the helicopter. So I know you talked about the bases that we've got right now. What
Yeah.
are the, kind of going to some of the equipment that we're using now? What are, to my knowledge, we're a fairly advanced aviation bureau compared to a lot of other agencies out there. So what are we working now?
So now in 2017, we got our first Bell 429, so our first twin engine with a hoist on there. So we had primarily been doing rappel short haul rescue. So now we got this, for people that don't know, they see a hoist or a winch. It just has that cable that goes in and out, and you can pick people up, and you could send people down to the ground, and then you can pick people up and bring them into the helicopter and get them out of there. So obviously that's been used in maritime rescue forever because you're not short hauling over the ocean.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it's been done, but
Right.
so we got that in 2017, and we went through a bunch of training on how to hoist, and because we had no idea, this is like brand new to us.
Right.
So the first base I got it was Central, and we didn't realize what kind of tool we were getting and how amazing it was. So, and we progressively went through more training, so we went initial training, which is just daytime hoisting and doing that. And then a year later, we went through night training. So doing it at night. And that's something that you can't do with short haul rappel. I mean, you can, but it's not really, it's really exigent. if you
it's
do.
frowned upon.
Yeah,
as they say.
you don't really want to do short haul because it's a lot of reference and you need light.
Yeah.
But at night we can use night vision and the lighting on the helicopter, and so that gave us like because half the day is dark, and so that we talk about like a first light short haul. Then somebody's got to stay all night with these people. And
Yeah.
they can't if you can't hike them out or whatnot, so you come and do it in the morning. But now we can just show up at night and do it. So that we were getting a lot of night rescues and changing a lot of stuff, and then we went to flood rescue. Obviously, even though it's Arizona,
Right.
we get some pretty prolific flooding at times.
Yeah.
Right.
So we did that training, and then our last one, I call it advanced skills or vertical surface. So picking people off that are like hanging on a cliff, or
Right.
in a really in a place where the fall exposure is very high,
Right.
Okay.
and stuff. So and then each other base when they've got there, because we have 3 Bell 429s now. So there's one in Phoenix, one in Flag, and one in Tucson. And Western
Nice.
still operating out of Bell 407. So and each base gets the helicopter, and they start their training. And most of the bases, I think Flag's all the way, they're through night, and they're going to be doing water and the advanced skills shortly, and we'll get
Awesome.
everybody spun up on it.
So, again, another one beyond the questions here. Can you speak into that person who goes, even like I've talked about my fanboy status for the Aviation Bureau on here before.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
I've been up at the just in my job duties. I've had you've interviewed for us on the media, on the news before and stuff. So I've told my staff, hey, if aviation's involved, I'll deal with it. You guys stay here. I'm going to deal with it. I'll go up to the hangar. But anyway, for somebody like me who didn't know how to get into it and didn't know what to do, what would you say to somebody who has an interest in aviation, who thinks, oh, that's a pretty cool job? What are the steps? What should they be doing to prepare themselves? I mean, is it the same as you working, getting your EMT paramedic? What would you recommend? What's the process that you would recommend to somebody who says, hey, how do I get here to do what you're doing?
Well, it's not an easy one, I can say that, Obviously, we tell people like, yeah, we want you to get sworn and get hired. If you're out there and you don't have your EMT and paramedic, most of us paramedics recommend like, hey, get your EMT, start getting experience, and get into a paramedic program, and then start working as a paramedic. Because it's just like anything. You get off field training. Do you really know how to be, a cop? No, you got to learn
Not
that
at
through
all.
experience. So, yeah, right. You're doing like you're
winging it, as we say.
Yeah, like I know how to fill these forms out and make a traffic stop. Right?
Yes.
But same thing with being a paramedic. So you need to just because you got out of paramedic school, now you got to learn how to be a paramedic, and you can only do that by working out in the field. So and for us, and this is just kind of the way we feel like. We're by ourselves sometimes with patients, or like say you're the rescue specialist that gets inserted on a hoist on a plane crash, and you got 5 or 6 people in this single engine aircraft that are down, and that's happened. All right, you're the only paramedic there. Triage it, figure it out, and so that could be very challenging if you're like a brand new out of school paramedic.
Yeah.
So I always advise people to get that experience prior, and then come to us, or get some of that experience and then get hired, and then if you can work part-time outside of here. Now, the caveat is we have a lot of troopers that were on the road in various places and got their EMT, got their paramedic while they're working, and then started working on experience. So there's that route as well. That's very challenging. All those guys and gals that have done that, my hat's off to them because it's hard enough just to work part-time or full-time and get your paramedic. So, but at the end of the day, we want that experience. Any experience, like, a lot of these, all the counties, like most search and rescue is done by volunteer.
Yeah.
So if that's something that's, that's a big part of our job. So that would be another huge thing. Go volunteer, get some experience with a search and rescue team, doing rescue, doing search.
Yeah.
And every county needs help,
Oh, yeah.
throughout the country. Like the numbers are down. So, not to say do that just so you can come here. Like this should be kind of part of some, like if you do that and you don't like it, maybe this is not your gig. But,
Yeah.
just we need the experience because you're going to be put in the helicopter and like, wow, you're going to have an enormous amount of responsibilities fairly quickly.
Well, and to
kinda-
your point, it's just you. Sorry.
Or no.
Yeah, it's just you. You're the paramedic on that.
Sometimes, you can be,
airway,
you
so
can be by yourself.
you're going to be asked to perform and sometimes not have self-service. Be like, hey, is it the Is it this vein or that vein?
I was going to say the same thing. It's kind of like what you said about, you get off FTO and Sanders, and it's just you. And on these helicopters, you get hoisted down. It's just you. If it's a plane crash with 5 victims, it is just you. Yeah, you've got some support up there, but they're not down there with you. So you got to be able to handle that appropriately. And the department, the agency has to be able to trust that you can do that, and there's not going to be any issues. So
yeah, it's not that during field training. I mean, we do a good job of like making sure.
Absolutely.
But there's only so much medical training you can get that
I know for
never
sure
supersedes.
Russ makes sure guys are ready.
That's true.
He is not going to let you just be out there.
that is true.
Yeah, he was the instructor and tester for me when I was going off field training there. Yeah, he didn't make it easy.
No, which is good though. That's what
Yeah.
you want. I tell people all the time. I said, listen, if you don't want a challenge, then maybe policing, in this case, paramedic, not for you.
Yeah,
But if you want to continue challenging yourself, and this is why I hate to say it, we get a lot of, former close to professional athletes in this job because they're used to pushing themselves and challenging themselves every day to be as good as they can be. And then they get an injury that they just can't come back from, whatever it is. They find themselves in policing because it's like, hey, this isn't easy. It's awesome, and it's super, super rewarding.
yeah,
But it's definitely, you're going to have to push yourself to be your best all the time. And that's what makes it great, though. So,
Yeah. So now, actually, getting back to our questions, you've kind of already said you're in your dream role here at DPS.
Yeah.
This is where you've wanted to be. You're there. Which I feel like we need to adjust this question because everybody so far that we were talking to seems to be in their
this is
dream
where I
role,
wanna be.
which is. Again, I think that's really cool that we've just been grabbing some random people and they've all said like, hey, I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. And that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. I think that says a lot about the agency. So then the question is, if you weren't in air rescue, if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what do you think would be interesting? What would you want to do?
man.
Be a 7 Points podcast host?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
there you go.
almost there because I'm here. That's a tough question because it's a good question because there's so many things to do here. I mean, besides this specialty stuff, I don't know. As I love shooting, so I guess going over to SWAT, maybe being a sniper over there, that would be one of them. Firearms instruction, maybe being the firearms instructor unit.
Yeah.
The FTU training unit, and because I always love instructing, whether I'm doing it as a paramedic or a technical rescue instructor at the base. That's it's a big training element. So that'd be one. And then maybe going to investigations. I don't know. There's always
What? Investigation?
right. What?
DPS offers that?
Yeah, they have people investigating. Yeah, I would like a lot of them.
A lot.
It's still that's still something I would consider, but.
Yeah.
The agency just has so many things. You got like
true.
the bomb guys, EOD, and canine guys, and it's just like anytime I work with a group I haven't worked with in a while, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We do some
Right.
cool stuff over here too. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
There really is a ton of things. I mean, people that listen to the podcast maybe even get sick of me saying it, but that's the joy of policing in general. Mm-hmm. And then when you elevate to the state level, every job that is possible, we have. We may not have a ton of them, right? There's specialty units for a reason, right? We don't have 100 officers on each thing. There's not 100 paramedics, things like that. So maybe we need 100 paramedics, but there's something, if you're willing to work at it and you're willing to gain the skills and put forth the effort to get to, it's available.
Yeah.
And you can do it. So...
Yeah, we're not going to say it's not competitive because
It's very competitive,
aviation, every specialty at this agency is competitive.
Yeah.
There's usually testing processes. You have to rank high enough. It's very competitive, but I think that goes back to what you're saying about you got to push yourself and you got to really want it. And it's absolutely worth it if you do it and you achieve that goal. It's absolutely worth it, but you got to push yourself. So,
and that's the joy of it, right? I said this in our little interview that we did with each other is part of what drove me into this career was the fact that, wait, I can do different stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, not that I get bored with something, but at the same time, I'm doing something for long enough, and then I go, man, you mean I can go get a bomb safely off of the highway or whatever, or an explosive, maybe not a bomb, but you know what I mean? Like something that was dangerous and go get rid of that, and then I get to blow it up. You know what I mean? Like that sounds cool to me, you know? I can learn about all that stuff. Awesome, let's do it. That's the joy of it, I'll never be bored because there's always something.
Always something. Yeah, I know. Before I joined DPS, I didn't know that there was a crime lab. I didn't know. That's like until I saw them. Saying, those robot dogs are pretty incredible. I didn't even know we had a museum here. I was like, this is all fantastic stuff.
So now the best part of the podcast.
No.
In my opinion, especially for you, because I already know you've got stories on stories. And if you want to share multiple ones, that's fine. But give us, we're calling it the Trooper Tale, something that's either funny, just interesting, or just downright super cool that's happened in your career.
Yeah, well, I had to think about this one.
No, stop it.
Yeah, no. I had to think about all the times I broke stuff, and if I didn't mention that, I'd be like, you will make mistakes in this career.
Yes.
And, if I didn't mention this small little part, I did, we call it squib, the hoist. And I know if people listen, if I don't talk about this, I'm going to get grief. But there's a test you do to check the hoist, right, and make sure, because it has explosive squibs on it. Because if that cable gets stuck in a tree or in a rock, it'll just pull the helicopter out of the sky. So we want to be able to explosively cut that off.
Right.
So there's a procedure for it, and we were out flying, and I was doing it way out of procedure, of sorts. And you're supposed to do it on the ground, not flying, basically.
Right.
And there's a press to test switch, and so I hit that, and boop, it cut the cable. And so it's not supposed to do that. We found out later there was some issues with grounding, but I'm always been known as, the mechanics call me Squibby for a while. And so
Lovingly, of course.
Lovingly, yeah. And luckily it got covered by Bell because of some things were painted wrong. So I got lucky. Anyway, we have a really nice checklist for it now. So,
I bet.
Yeah.
There's every checklist has a name attached to it.
There's a lot of policies that have rules on them. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a joke, I have a memo for that here.
Yes.
I already got it for you. Here you go.
Exactly.
But so I had to get that out of the way. Otherwise, some of if people listen, they'll be like, he didn't mention that. So we talked about all that training that we go through and all the we had just finished what a lot of people call vertical surface or advanced skills. So picking people off of cliffs and stuff, and you might see anybody's familiar, you'll see the coastal cliffs in California and different places. So the Coast Guard and California Highway Patrol do a lot of these because people try climbing out from the surf or something. So they're just pickled out there, kind of gecko, do we call it? And so we have some instances of that, and a lot of times, most of the time, it's we had a short haul program, so we weren't really going and getting those people. But with a hoist, you can go in there and do it. So really high risk, but low frequency type thing.
Yeah.
So it's Saturday. We get done with that training. I'm on shift on Sunday. So we come in and we're all kind of that was good training. Probably, I don't know when we're ever going to do this, And we're talking that morning like that, right? And you know what happens every time you say something like that? What's going to happen? So later that night, one of the medics from at Northern calls us hey, I think I got a rescue. It looks like it will be a vertical surface. You guys just finished that training, right? Oh, okay. From here on out, when she calls after that, I'm oh, I know we're going to go do the real deal.
Right.
I don't know what it is. But so we go up there and we fly up, and so it's on Mount Eldon, which is a mountain kind of just northeast of Flag. It's basically in Flag. And Flagstaff's that part of Mount Eldon is probably 7,500 feet, almost 8,000. And so there's a trail that goes down there, and it's like a canyon. It's a waterfall trail. So there's this thing. So they said, hey, we got a guy, and he's in one of the slots in there kind of pickled. So we fly up there, and we're looking, and we see this guy, and sure enough, he's kind of wedged in this slot, and right below him is a 100-foot fall. He missed the trail and kind of slid down this crack and stopped himself. So
I would say that's missing the trail.
Yeah, it's a little bit. And I'm oh wow, this is the real deal. We were talking about earlier, and well, how are we gonna do this? And we could see some of the ground rescuers coming in, and we're looking man, there's not a lot of anchors, and this guy looks in a bad way. So I'm looking at it all right, well, let's, I'm the rescuer. I'm going to be the guy that rides the cable that day. And Russ was the hoist operator. And it says Scott Clifton was flying. just say the crew. And
Great crew.
yeah,
Yeah. I was going to say,
minus
you
me,
can't
but-
get much better.
yeah, it's a pretty experienced crew in there.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no kidding.
But I'm looking at it like, all right, we'll insert me. I'll take a look. We'll see if the risk, like how bad off he is, because I don't want to make it worse, right? I don't
Right.
want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to knock this guy off the
The
cliff.
first rule of rescuing someone.
So don't hurt them or make it worse. So, so they like at first we get in there and I don't care how powerful your helicopter is. We had kind of winds that are coming down, like the winds come down the canyon as it cools on top. So we had kind of winds coming down, so that affects your power. You got to pull in more because that wind's already going through the rotor system. So the first time we get in there, it's like, man, we're kind of right at the margin, which we are a lot. That's just the fact of the matter. Like this state is a very challenging state. Our pilots, I'll just say this, so that very good pilots, and they make it look easy, and what they do is very hard. Just so I can speak to them. But so we go and land at a park, call one of our troopers on patrol to come pick up. Like we unload as much stuff out of the helicopter because you want to get the weight off to get a better power margin, right? So we call this, the trooper comes and picks up all this gear we didn't need to do this rescue, right? All our extra medical gear and our cardiac monitor and all kinds of stuff. We just leave it in this park and he comes and gets it. And so we fly back in there and they insert me and I get down and I'm like, we didn't have this cool thing. We have this cool thing that's called Access now. It's a portable ICS system so that you can just talk to the crew in the helicopter wirelessly. So it's really cool. We didn't have that.
Right.
All I had was like a push-to-talk radio. So they insert me. It ends up being about a 200-foot hoist to get me down there and get the helicopter in the right position. So that's hard in the daytime. It's really, really hard at night. And so they get me in, they make contact, and I kind of was like, I'm going to get in there, and if he looks pretty stable and it's probably a better idea to do a ground-based rescue with ropes and the SAR team, then I'll call aboard. And like, let me just get an eye on him. So you kind of do this wall walking thing, and I kind of get around the corner, and I can see him now. And his eyes are like this big.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, you could tell, like, he's been holding on. I found out later he had to, like, wedge his foot in a crack just to get his phone out to text.
Wow.
You know, and that's how we called 911. It was like speaker with like just barely holding on. So he looks bad. I'm like, all right, we need to do this. So I keep signaling over, and because it's 200 foot, and like once I kind of got in the crack, Russ couldn't see me as well, so I had to get on the push to talk to tell him like my level, and so I'm kind of like I see him and I'd get close, and I have this thing. It's called a capture strap, and all it is just a big strap that goes underneath your arms, and I just kind of put it on there. And you keep your arms down, and it's very uncomfortable, but this is, I got to get something around you, and then we're going to go.
It's better than being dead. So,
Yeah. So, and I'd get right near him, and I'm like, I could see him, and I'm like, okay, I got to go. And all of a sudden, I'd go up, you know, because they couldn't, like, tell the height, you know, and the helicopter would change. And so I'd have to, like, push away, because I'm like, I can't knock him off. So I'd push back, or I'd get really close to him, and then I'd drop. You know, because it's 200 foot at night, it's hard to see. So,
Right.
you know, Russ is working really hard. Scott's working really hard to keep the helicopter in position. So this went on for what felt like an eternity. When we reviewed the video of it, you know, I spent about 10 minutes on the cable.
Wow.
That means those guys are sitting in a hover, a really high-performance hover, and working the cable, too, for 10 minutes. And I finally, like, I get on the radio, and I finally get kind of course-corrected. And I'm like, this is it. I'm like at the perfect level, and I get click, okay, I'm under. I go to pull this one, and I start to pull this one tight, and boom, we're off. And so then I signal, like, I got him, and I would ride so that I could kind of get my feet under his butt, basically.
Right.
And I'm just holding him as tight as I can. And so he's, like, right there, and we're off. And so I'm signaling it with between, like, okay, get us away from the rock face. We come off, and we hit this rotor wash, like, because it comes spiraling down, right?
Yeah.
And so at that level, it was like hosing us pretty good. So it's going to grab me, and it puts us in this big swing. And so I'm swinging, and I'm like, I'm holding him, and my job is to protect him. And we're going towards this big rock. And I'm like, all right. I'm looking, I'm like trying to think in my mind, okay, which ankle do I want to break to stop this? You know, because I'm going to take the ride for this guy. And we start slowing down. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not going to hit the rock, but we're going to go in that tree. So now I'm like trying to like face towards it. And then right at the last second, we kind of stop. And so I just kind of kick the tree just to say hi.
That's funny.
And so now we're pulling away out of the canyon. So all the lights that were kind of illuminating everything were like go away. So now it's just this black abyss out here, and I can't see anything. And the only thing I can see is the helicopter and its lights. And so from my perspective, because we're still swinging around, they're trying to fix that, is I just see this light moving around up there because I'm not, it looks like they're moving from my perspective. So our plan was, normally you would just kind of take that person and fly hanging on the helicopter and set them back down on the ground and get them out of the device, maybe put them in something different. But we're like, no, we don't have anywhere nearby and it's dark. So they bring me all the way up, and we had briefed, like Russ is going to like give me a heads up or something, like, do you think you could put them inside, right? Because the minute they kind of let loose, they can fall out of this device.
Yeah.
So we get up to the helicopter, and I look at Russ, and I'm like, So he comes over, and he starts bear hugging. We go right to that park where we dropped our gear off. And this is kind of the funny part of the story, besides all the other stuff. But so we land, and he just kind of lowers us to the ground. So I kind of let him off, and I realized, I'm like, man, my pants feel really wet. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I pissed myself, but
There's always a chance.
yeah, it was kind of scary. And I'm like, I don't think I did. And I look, and I kind of let the guy down, and I look over, and I'm like, no, I didn't pee myself. He did.
Yeah.
So he peed on me.
Right.
And I was like, well, and that started the kind of the long history of people doing things during rescue because they're scared, which is totally natural.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I don't blame the guy at all. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
that's an experience.
It's better to do that than the alternative.
Yeah.
So-
And he's, check him out. And so we fly back to Northern. And this was one of the few times so far in my career, I'm sure, I call that a career rescue because it scared me a lot. I was scared. And we all landed. We shut the helicopter down, and we're at the other base. We're out there, and everyone's kind of just waiting. And we all kind of walked around to, the front of the helicopter. And it was one of the few times I've ever, we all just kind of looked at each other, and it's like, you good? You
Yeah.
good? You good? It was kind of like, everyone's good?
Had to
Okay.
debrief it a little bit.
Yeah, it was just like a mental, just checking. And it was one of the, I think that was the first time I ever done it with everybody.
Yeah.
So,
How do you come down off of that adrenaline?
that's
what I mean. I was getting pumped up just listening to
I
you.
don't think
Yeah.
the three of us
Yeah.
were even breathing
Yeah,
as we were
yeah.
telling the
No,
story.
it's
We're like,
like,
what's going to happen?
Right.
that's kind of the nice thing about flying home
Yeah.
is, we definitely chilled out there for a little bit. You put the helicopter, you talk to the other crew that's there. The sergeant from Coconino County was there, and it's just, you do kind of have to chill for a little bit, especially before you get in a helicopter. And I think after that, we were kind of like, that's the cool thing in aviation. Like if you're at a point where you got to call it, you can call it. And we were kind of like, all right, let's fly back home, and we'll see how we feel when we get back.
Yeah.
But that is nice to have that flight, just kind of go back to Phoenix. And,
Sure.
But it takes a little bit. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you've got to have some type of outlet that's a healthy outlet for stress like that, because it's not just for you guys. Heck, if you want to get to the nitty gritty of it, every traffic stop
Yeah.
gets you a little bit of an adrenaline rush when you're walking up to an unknown, and you've got to be able to cope with that somehow. So that's my advice to if there's any cops out there listening. Find a healthy outlet to help you get off of the adrenaline rush, to your point, because adrenaline's great when you need it. Adrenaline's terrible for you when you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, you get all the rise in cortisol and all
yes.
that.
Yeah, it's great when you need it to save your life and when it needs to sharpen your mind to know what to do. But after that, you got to get it worked out of your system the right way. So that's my advice to any cops listening: is find the right outlet.
Yeah, coming down after shift. Yeah, even working on patrol.
Yeah,
You're alert the whole time, and then you got to come home and just
Yep.
Right.
So avoid
listen to podcasts.
Yeah, listen to a podcast. Maybe not about policing though, but avoid the alcohol, avoid the prescription drugs, all that stuff. That's how guys get in trouble. Is they start coping with those things instead of, there's healthier things, exercise, eating right, stuff like that. So
Yeah. Well, Mike, that story right there.
Yeah, I don't know how you top that.
We're done. Okay, let's stop.
tell us about a story about a hiker who stubbed his toe.
Yeah, that's always the joke, right? We
Right.
can't find the bad guys, but you can always find the guy with a hurt ankle.
No, listen. I will never talk trash about Ranger because I've used you guys so many times on search warrants, and I can't even put a value on it to have guys that know what we do because I know they're sworn and they know us, right? When I know that you're in the chopper up there watching the backyard and everything, I know what you're going to tell me, right? You know what I mean? I know that there's not going to be any missed spots. So it's invaluable to us.
Well, and I know I've gone up. I think actually last time I went up was with you.
Yeah.
Because you told me how to operate the camera system. And obviously with no training or anything, I'm getting air sick just looking at this camera while we're flying and moving. I'm getting air sick. But then just even you guys knowing how to do it, it's not an easy task following a person, a car, anything with those camera systems. I mean, I know they've advanced a ton and we've got a great one, but it's a challenge. So
it's its own job.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that insight now, not that I was ever talking crap about you guys before, but I certainly wouldn't now because I've seen it and go, you guys have no idea how hard that is. That is not an easy job.
That is a shout out to not just DPS Ranger, but that's to Mesa, to
Falcon,
Falcon, and then Phoenix Firebird and MCSO's air
Fox,
units, and all of those air units. I'm telling you, I don't know how we end up finding just the best guys ever, always, to go put them on helicopters, but that's just the way it always ends up. And every department, I feel like, has the same story, at least the ones I've worked with. I developed a great relationship with the guys in Mesa, during my time in patrol, to where I could tell something was going south on a traffic stop just by the tone of that guy's voice.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we need to send, before he even asked for backup, I need to start heading that way. And they knew us too, right? They would know, hey, we'll just run over there and run our spotlight and tell you there's no collision. You know what I mean? And so it's a great working relationship with everybody, and I love that about it. It's a great thing.
No, I like that when I was on patrol here, coming back here, and I had a bunch of help and stuff, but working in Phoenix, Firebird, I'd be out on a traffic stop off highway or something. Here comes the helicopter. They're going to do a couple circles. I might come up on the radio. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, guys. But that was always nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good reassurance in a place where people are walking up on you all the time, on traffic stops everywhere. So it is what it is. The other part about the air unit is it's more than just the helicopter. We have fixed wing assets as well. I've never actually ridden on Ranger. Love to. That'd be awesome. But I have flown on. We have a King Air 250 and a King Air 200, which some of the most reliable apparatuses in all of flight out there. And they do a great job maintaining them as best they can. And they're older apparatuses, but they're great. A great asset in investigations. I've used them. In my current role, we
our
use
maintenance
them.
staff is awesome.
Yeah,
shout
absolutely
out to
the
those
best.
guys.
Yeah, for sure.
We need to get one of the maintenance guys on.
Yeah,
here
that would
too.
be cool.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks again, Mike, for being here, for sharing your time with us, for sharing
thanks for having me.
your experience. I think it's been it's a great insight to aviation and one of those things that a lot of people don't know about here. So thanks for being here. Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. No, I'm glad. Thanks for having me.
and thanks for wearing your Ghostbuster outfit.
There you go.
All right, to everybody, all of our
there.
viewers and listeners, thanks for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and we'll see you on the next episode.